In private, your mistakes are lessons. In public, they are weapons used against you. This was Machiavelli's warning. What you reveal in public doesn't just show your character, it reveals your leverage, or your lack of it. The public is not neutral. It observes, it judges, and it remembers what makes you vulnerable. If you want to move with power in this world, you must become a master of public restraint. And that begins with knowing the 11 things you must never do in front of others, no matter how honest, emotional, or authentic they feel. Because power isn't just what you do, it's what you refuse to expose. Never show desperation. Desperation is a scent, and the crowd can smell it. When you chase too hard, beg too loudly, or announce your hunger for success, approval, or attention, you don't rise. You sink. Machiavelli warned, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Appear desperate, and even your allies will start to question your value. Power is calm, controlled, composed, even when hungry. Because in public, perception is more powerful than truth. And once people sense you're chasing something harder than they are, they'll treat you like someone who's already lost. Never correct someone publicly unless you intend to humiliate them. The urge to set the record straight is a trap, especially in front of others. When you correct someone in public, you force them into defensive ego. You make them choose between dignity and truth. They'll choose dignity and turn on you. Machiavelli believed shame was a dangerous tool. It must be used deliberately. If you shame someone publicly, make sure it ends them. Otherwise, you've created an enemy with a grudge. If correction is necessary, do it quietly. If domination is the goal, do it mercilessly. Never show envy. You think you're hiding it, but envy leaks. In the tone of your congratulations, in your eyes when they win, in your silence when others are praised. Machiavelli would say, don't ever reveal it, because envy turns you from a threat into a bitter observer. It signals that others have something you do not, and worse, that you know it. If you feel envy, transmute it into fire, into strategy, into ambition, but never let them see it. Because once they know they've rattled you, they'll never stop flaunting what they have. Never apologize for your power. There is a kind of apology that doesn't use words. It hides in your tone, your body language, your hesitation. And once you start doing it in public, you train others to see your strength as negotiable. Machiavelli despised unnecessary softness. To him, power must be worn like armor, visible, silent, unapologetic. You don't need to explain why you're successful. You don't need to downplay your ambition. You don't need to make others comfortable with your dominance. You only need to hold your frame. Because once you apologize for your edge, the world takes the knife and cuts you down with it. Never react emotionally in public. Anger, tears, panic, hurt. These are real emotions. But in public, they are seen as leverage points. Machiavelli didn't say never feel them. He said, never reveal them without intention. Every time you lose control in front of people, you're giving them a map to your buttons, your fears, your limits. Power is not emotionless, but it is tactically composed. If you cry, make sure it's strategic. If you get angry, make sure it's lethal. Otherwise, your emotions don't make you human. They make you vulnerable. Never explain yourself to the crowd. You said what you said. You did what you did. Now let the silence speak. The need to over-explain is a disease. It turns conviction into confusion. It makes your audience question the very thing they were starting to believe. Machiavelli believed that strength was clarity, expressed once. Say your truth, own it, and then leave it to echo. Because every word you add in fear of being misunderstood reduces your authority. Never display uncertainty about your path. Most people think humility means saying, I don't have it all figured out. But in public, uncertainty is not seen as relatable. It's seen as disqualification. Machiavelli warned that a leader who hesitates, even briefly, invites rivals to speak louder, act faster, and seize control. If you project doubt, people won't just question your plan. They'll start building their own. Because in public, people don't follow accuracy. They follow certainty. The man who speaks with conviction will always overpower the one who waits for clarity. You can adjust in private. You can reflect in silence. But in public, move like your decisions were made before they asked. Never reveal who you secretly resent. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to name names. You don't even need to admit it out loud. But the moment you show disdain for someone in public, even through subtle shade, tone, or expression, you hand them your power. Because now the room knows they matter to you. They affect you. You think about them. And worst of all, your enemies now know where to poke. Machiavelli would say, if you despise someone, make it look like you've forgotten they exist. The most terrifying silence is not ignorance. It's indifference. Never try to win every argument. There is a difference between being right and looking desperate to be right. Most people argue in public to preserve ego, to feel respected, to not lose face. But Machiavelli knew something smarter. Every public argument has an audience, and the real game isn't won with facts. It's won with frame. If you argue emotionally, you look unstable. If you argue too much, you look insecure. If you argue down, you elevate the fool. So what do? You let the fool speak. Then you speak once, clearly, like it's the end of the conversation. Not a debate, an execution. Never complain. Nothing drains your perceived power faster than public complaint. It doesn't matter how justified it is. It doesn't matter if people agree. To complain is to admit powerlessness, to beg for pity, to broadcast the message, I don't control my world. Something else does. Machiavelli didn't believe in fairness. He believed in force. He'd say, if something is broken, fix it. If it's unjust, outsmart it. If it hurts, use it. But never ever bring your wounds to the crowd. Because the crowd doesn't remember your pain. It remembers that you felt powerless enough to speak it out loud. Never reveal what you truly desire. This is the deadliest one of all. Because desire is gravity. It gives others leverage. Once they know what you want, approval, loyalty, status, love, they can dangle it. And the man who can be baited can be controlled. Machiavelli believed in mystery. Not to be aloof, but to be ungovernable. Let people guess. Let them wonder what drives you. Let them misread you. Because once your motives are clear, your enemies will use them like keys and walk straight into your mind. Understand this. None of these 11 are about lying. They're about discretion. Machiavelli didn't say, be fake. He said, control your surface. So no one can touch your depths. And public life is nothing but surface. People aren't reading your soul. They're reading your posture, your timing, your tone, your restraint. They're watching for what slips through the cracks. So your power lies in what you don't reveal. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to dominate every room. But you must be unknowable, unshaken, unbaited. Because once you reveal your fears, wounds, enemies, doubts, cravings, you give the world a map of your weaknesses. And in Machiavelli's world, that's the same as handing them a weapon. You've now seen what never to do in public. But Machiavelli wouldn't stop at avoidance. He would ask, what should you project instead? Because absence of weakness is not power. It's just neutrality. Power is built when people look at you and feel something they can't name. Not fear, necessarily, but uncertainty, tension, distance. They don't know if you like them. They don't know what you want. They don't know what you're planning. And that's the most dangerous public position of all, unpredictability. Machiavelli understood that public life is theater. Every gesture is a message. Every silence is a signal. Every flaw you show can be used against you, and every inch of mystery becomes a source of strength. This is why the prince must be controlled in his visibility. He must show only what supports his narrative and hide everything else in shadow. Because in a world that demands transparency, opacity is dominance. Here's what happens when you obey the 11 rules. You become unreadable, and that's when the game flips. People start adjusting to you, tiptoeing around your reactions, studying your silences, reading into your non-answers, projecting power onto you, because they don't know where your limits are. That's how kings are made. Not by convincing people you're powerful, but by giving them nothing to challenge. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. A man who never complains at work becomes stoic. A woman who never reveals jealousy becomes above it all. A leader who never reacts emotionally becomes unshakable. An individual who never explains himself is suddenly mysterious. A rival who never reveals what he wants becomes impossible to stop. None of them shouted. None of them begged. They simply refused to expose what others expected them to. That refusal becomes power projection. But be warned, you will be misunderstood. You will be accused of arrogance, of being distant, calculating. Let them talk. Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the rulers of perception, the ones who understand that in public, reputation isn't what's true. It's what's believable. And what's believable is whatever you give people permission to see. This is why public restraint is not cowardice. It is intellectual warfare. When others reveal themselves freely, they become legible, predictable, manipulable. But when you reveal nothing but calculated signals, you become a mirror. People project their desires, fears, envy, and admiration onto you, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. And now you control the narrative without ever opening your mouth. Machiavelli would teach you to walk into public spaces like a strategist. Every word, every glance, every delay is intentional. You don't react. You frame. You don't compete. You observe. You don't defend. You deflect, then decide. You don't express your truth. You express what reinforces your position. That's what separates the admired from the irrelevant. Not truth, tactical truth. Truth that elevates. Truth that serves the image. All else is reserved for the shadows. This is why you must reject modern advice like, be vulnerable, be real, speak your truth. Let people see the real you. Machiavelli would laugh. Let them see what you want them to believe. Nothing more, because public vulnerability is a transaction. And in most cases, you're not paid back in connection. You're paid back in weakness. If you must be vulnerable, do it with precision. Reveal a small flaw to distract from a bigger one. Admit to a past failure while showcasing current dominance. Share emotion only when it sways the room in your favor. But never reveal the flaws that can be used against you. Never give the room a chance to pity you, because pity is only one step above disrespect. Power is never pitied. It is observed, feared, respected, studied. And the moment you become easy to figure out, you become easy to eliminate. The true master of power does not dominate with volume. He dominates with presence. And the moment you understand how to control your presence in public, you stop playing the game on defense. You stop being the one who watches, reacts, overthinks. You become the one who sets the tempo, the one who makes the room adjust, the one who is watched. This is where Machiavelli's final principle begins. If you move correctly in public, you don't have to speak at all. Your silence becomes self-defense. Your absence becomes intimidation. Your stillness becomes proof of command. But first, let's get something clear. Most people don't realize how much they're being watched. How much every gesture, pause, glance, and twitch is feeding a silent narrative about them. Because the public doesn't listen to your words. It listens to your patterns, your micro-decisions, the moments when you break your frame even just for a second. And in those seconds, you give away your position. Not your social position, but your psychological one. Do you know what happens when you make a mistake in private? You learn. You recover. You rebuild. But when you make that mistake in public, you don't just lose points. You lose credibility. You lose influence. You lose the silent advantage of unpredictability. Because Machiavelli understood what most people today deny. The crowd is not your friend. The crowd is your courtroom. And in that courtroom, you are either building a myth or being sentenced to irrelevance. Let's return to the rules. If you cry in private, you process. But cry in public, and now you're labeled fragile. If you speak emotionally in private, you are honest. But speak emotionally in public, and now you are reactive. If you show envy in private, you're human. But show envy in public, and you become smaller in the eyes of the room. You think people are empathizing. They're not. They're cataloging your weaknesses. Every public mistake doesn't just affect the moment. It alters your reputation moving forward. And that's where Machiavelli's genius becomes brutal. He never allowed his real thoughts to be public property. You want to know the most powerful thing you can project in public? It's not confidence. It's not friendliness. It's not even intelligence. It's calculated detachment. The ability to sit in silence while others overexpress. The ability to endure discomfort without seeking validation. The ability to know exactly what you think and never feel the need to announce it. This creates tension, mystery, space for others to wonder, to speculate, to react to you. That's what power is in the Machiavellian model, making others act around your stillness. And here's the thing. The most manipulative people in your life, they aren't loud, they aren't chaotic. They're composed, measured, tactful. They rarely make public mistakes because they never make emotional ones. They do not beg. They do not explain. They do not apologize unless it serves their image. That's not sociopathy. That's strategy. And Machiavelli would have crowned them. Because in his world, the one who governs perception governs reality. So how do you build this presence? You start by internalizing this principle. You do not exist for public consumption. Your thoughts, your motives, your fears, your visions, none of it is owed to anyone. You reveal only what supports your story. Everything else remains in the vault. When someone offends you in public, you smile. When you're underestimated, you note it, silently. When your ego screams to correct the narrative, you let silence do the heavy lifting. Because here's what Machiavelli knew. Silence is not retreat, it's positioning. The longer you can go without revealing yourself, the more they need to guess. And the more they guess, the more power you have over their expectations. Let's go deeper. In every group dynamic, family, team, business, social circle, there are two kinds of people. The ones who overshare to connect. The ones who observe to control. Which do you think Machiavelli would be? Every time you open your mouth in public to connect, you reveal something, your values, your pressure points, your logic tree, and someone in that room is watching, not to understand you, but to exploit you. Because while you're being authentic, someone else is writing the script you'll be boxed into. This is why Machiavelli would never let his real desires slip in front of the crowd. Because once people know what you want, they begin to shape themselves as either allies or obstacles. And once you label someone as an obstacle, you've already lost the element of strategy. Your enemies should never know they are your enemies. Let them believe they're winning until it's too late. This requires restraint, discipline, and an almost surgical control over your public behavior. It's not suppression, it's delayed dominance. Machiavelli believed the ruler must walk among people like a god in disguise, not above them, but not quite one of them either. He appears accessible, but is never fully understood. He speaks plainly, but reveals almost nothing. He listens carefully, but absorbs more than he ever reacts to. This isn't deception, it's asymmetry. And all true power flows from asymmetry. When others have more access to you than you have to them, you lose. But when you become a controlled leak of information, you gain all the advantage. Here's how you'll know you've mastered public restraint. People guess what you think and get it wrong. They feel your presence, but can't explain why it unsettles them. They want your approval, but can't figure out what earns it. They respect your silence more than they respect others' speeches. You speak last, and your words end the conversation. That is Machiavellian presence, not bombast, not charisma, but silent gravitational pull. Final law. Your enemies should never know you've seen them, and your allies should never know what you'll do next. Because once you become predictable, you are no longer feared. Once you become emotionally available in public, you are no longer unbreakable. Machiavelli didn't just want you to win, he wanted you to become unpunishable. And you can't be punished for what you never revealed. You can't be betrayed for what no one saw coming. You can't be dethroned if you never sat where they expected. So from this moment forward, do not explain yourself in public. Do not show envy, desperation, or uncertainty. Do not compete with fools. Let them burn their reputation while you watch. Do not show your real wounds. Do not speak your deepest desires. And never, ever confuse authenticity with self-exposure. Because the modern world rewards transparency, but Machiavelli rewards control. And control is built in the shadows. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be unreadable. You are not here to share your soul. You are here to build your myth. Let the others be humble. Let them be transparent. Let them live out loud. And when they burn under the weight of their own openness, you'll still be standing, unmoved, unknown, untouchable. That's how Machiavelli would walk through a crowd, and that's how you will from now on.